Hey, good people. Welcome in. Dr. Lund here. And today I want to talk about the death penalty. Case in point that's going on currently in the news has been the case of the Parkland school shooter, Nikolas Cruz, who at the time he was 19 years old, on February 14th, 2018, opened fired in a high school, killing 17 individuals and injuring an additional 17 individuals. He was caught very quickly after the incident, and in October 2021, he had pleaded guilty to all charges. So the trial that's been going on since July is not to find him guilty or innocent, but rather a penalty phase for the jury to determine if he will get life without parole or if he will get the death sentence. Just a little background. In 1972, the Supreme Court ruled that the death penalty in the United States was unconstitutional. It then reinstated the death penalty in 1976. Currently, 24 states allow the death penalty. 23 states have abolished capital punishment altogether, and 3 states, California, Oregon, and Pennsylvania, have governor-issued moratoriums in place. The chart on the screen shows you which states, the one in red, are the states that have the death penalty. States in green do not have it, and the 3 blue ones are the ones on moratorium. The states with the most executions since 1976 include Texas, Oklahoma, Virginia, Florida, Missouri, Georgia, Alabama, Ohio, North Carolina, and South Carolina. Of the states that abolished the death penalty, Wisconsin, interestingly, was the first state, having made capital punishment illegal in 1853, and the most recent state to abolish the death penalty is Virginia, and that was as of July 2021. Regardless where you stand on the topic of the death penalty, I would imagine all of us would agree that these crimes that have been committed, and the victims and the families, the attorneys, the judge, witnesses, everyone involved in these cases is experiencing extreme stress and extreme trauma. However, the jurors, in my opinion and from my experience, are the group of individuals that I believe experience some of the most traumatic signs and symptoms, and easily can lead to and have led to problems with post-traumatic stress syndrome. From interviews conducted with jurors who have sat on death row cases, one of their biggest concerns and fears and stresses that stayed with them long after the trial ended was, did they make the right decision in somebody's guilt or innocence? However, in the Cruz case, there was no decision needed to be made about guilt or innocence when he pleaded guilty to the murder of 17 adults and students at the high school during the attack. And of course, other major things that put all juries at risk are the things they see, smell, reactions from families, victims, and using the Cruz case as an example. As for any jury, they are always instructed that during the trial they cannot talk to anyone about what they see, what they hear. They cannot deliberate during this time, so there's no discussion even between jurors about what they're experiencing, which really puts an individual in a very isolated situation. They're reviewing crime scene photos, as this jury did and many do, autopsy photos, videos and audio recordings from the school shooting itself that students had made, where they could hear students screaming, gunshots, descriptions from eyewitnesses that talk about individuals moaning as they were dying during the attack, listening to family and victim impact statements, watching the family's reaction and having that pressure on knowing what the families may want and trying to balance that with the legalities that they have a duty to uphold. And in particular, with this particular case, the jurors went and visited the building at the high school where the attack took place. And interesting, 4 years later, aside from the victims' bodies being removed, everything else was maintained as is. So there were school books scattered, purses, backpacks, Valentine's Day cards, candies, gifts, desks strewn about, and one of the reporters who went with the jury reported that there continued to be bloodstains on the floor from where people had bled when they were shot. These are horrific visions and smells that individuals from the street doing their civic duty are not trained to deal with. And so taking all this information and having to keep it to yourself and come to a decision about somebody's life or death is a horrific expectation that we place on jurors without, in my opinion, any adequate support, especially after the trial. Now, in this particular case, the jury has found today's update that Cruz will probably get life without parole. And that may take the stress of a death sentence off of juries. However, it doesn't undo what they saw, heard, smelled for this entire time that started in July of this year and ended today, which is, I believe, the 13th of October. That's a lot of information. And as you see on the screen, the signs of PTSD, one of the hallmarks is it doesn't necessarily always happen right at the time of the incident. Symptoms could appear months or years later. And that is one of my concerns as a therapist of how do we deal with these individuals that we've expected to do their civic duty, show up for jury duty, pay them $30 a day, and go through an experience that changes their life forever without providing adequate support. Interviews with family members of folks who have been juries, especially in capital punishment cases, have talked about the change in their family member since their time as a juror on a trial, where they have changes in mood, sleep disturbances, nightmares. They want to isolate, not as sociable as they used to be, avoid maybe certain situations or certain places, and really show a very significant change in behaviors than they had prior to sitting on a jury. Again, I think it's very concerning that even most attorneys who try capital punishment cases really don't know in their jurisdiction if there are programs to support jurors after trials. It seems like when the trial is over, you either won or you're lost, but then you have this group of folks that you expect then to, you're done, you're not sequestered, you can go home and, rejoin your life. And for many people, that is far from the case. And so I think that there really should be a better merging of what the legal system expects and what we do psychologically to folks, and to merge mental health with those particular situations so that we are not causing more trauma or re-traumatizing folks. And that, I think, is an issue that really needs to be addressed, because jurors, usually after a trial, most remain silent. You never hear about them again, and so many times no one really understands what they're going through. And to have that kind of experience, we can sit on the sidelines and root for a death penalty, or root for life without parole, or root for wherever we stand on a certain issue. But unless you are sitting in that seat and experiencing those same type of situations, none of us can relate to the folks who sit on that jury and have to make the decisions and be under the microscope of families and victims, and attorneys, and even the perpetrator of, did you make the right decision? And now some people are going to love you and some people are going to hate you, which I think, again, adds to the stress of what these people had to just take into account to make any decision. Well, folks, I hope that gave you something a little different to think about, a different perspective on cases like this, where we're seeing a lot more being televised, and we are watching live in the courtroom. And of course, the jury we don't see, which I think adds to this cast of characters that become anonymous, and it's easy to discount what we don't see, that these are folks just like us who were selected to be on a jury and may really have some ill effects from doing so. But leave me any thoughts that you have on this, and I'll be looking at probably the next video of talking about some other mental health issues that are related to a litigant representing themselves in court, which is called pro se, and how that could affect witnesses involved in that particular trial. So friends, I appreciate you listening. Like and subscribe if these are the kind of topics that you're interested in, and thank you so much for watching.